On a spring night in 1993, an 18-year-old student named Stephen Lawrence was waiting for a bus in South London when he was murdered by a gang of white youths. It was a clear-cut racist attack, yet it took nearly 20 years and a literal change to an 800-year-old English law to put even two of his killers behind bars.
Wait, 20 years for an open and shut case? And what do you mean they had to change an 800-year-old law just to get a conviction?
That's the heart of this story. Stephen's death didn't just end a life, it eventually put the entire British police force on trial and fundamentally redefined how the UK understands systemic racism. It's April 22, 1993. Stephen Lawrence is a bright, ambitious kid with dreams of becoming an architect. He's standing at a bus stop in Eltham with his friend Duane Brooks, when a group of 5 or 6 white men suddenly accost them.
Just totally unprovoked? They didn't know these guys?
Zero connection. The gang shouted racial slurs and charged. Stephen was stabbed twice, severing his axillary artery, but he actually managed to run 130 yards before collapsing from blood loss.
So there's a surviving witness, Duane, and a dying victim in a residential neighborhood. Surely the police swarmed the area and rounded up suspects immediately?
That's what should have happened. Within hours, anonymous tips flooded in naming 5 local youths: Gary Dobson, David Norris, Luke Knight, and the Accord brothers. But the Metropolitan Police dragged their feet, the crime scene wasn't secured properly, and they actually treated the witness, Duane Brooks, with hostility rather than as a victim.
Why? Were they incompetent, or was something else going on?
It was both. The police essentially dismissed the idea that this was a racial hate crime. Because they didn't take the motive seriously, they didn't treat the investigation with the necessary urgency, allowing the suspects to clean up and get their stories straight. For years, the system stalled. The Crown Prosecution Service dropped the charges in 1993, claiming the evidence was too thin. Stephen's parents, Doreen and Neville Lawrence, were so desperate they actually launched a private prosecution against 3 of the suspects in 1996, but it collapsed in court.
So the guys just walked free? Is that where it ended?
Not even close. In 1997, the Daily Mail newspaper did something unheard of. They put the photos of the 5 suspects on the front page with the giant headline, "Murderers." They basically dared the men to sue them for libel if they were innocent. They never did.
That is an insane gamble for a newspaper. I'm guessing that lit a fire under the government?
It did. The new Home Secretary Jack Straw ordered a massive public inquiry led by Sir William Macpherson. When the report came out in 1999, it was a bombshell. It didn't just blame individual bad cops. It famously labeled the Metropolitan Police institutionally racist.
Institutional racism. That's a heavy term for the late 90s. What did it actually change?
It changed everything. The report led to 70 recommendations for police reform, and crucially, it argued for the repeal of the double jeopardy rule. For 8 centuries, you couldn't be tried twice for the same crime. Because of the Lawrence case, Parliament changed the law in 2005 to allow retrials if new and compelling evidence appeared.
And did they find any? Or was the trail too cold by then?
Science caught up. In 2010, a cold case review used modern forensic techniques on the suspect's old clothes. They found a microscopic blood stain on Gary Dobson's jacket and a tiny hair from Stephen on David Norris's jeans. It was the breakthrough they needed.
So after nearly 2 decades, they finally go to trial again?
Exactly. In 2012, Dobson and Norris were finally convicted of murder. They were sentenced as juveniles because of their age at the time of the crime, but the conviction was a massive symbolic victory for the Lawrences.
2 out of 5 or 6 isn't exactly a clean sweep, though. What about the others?
That's the lingering tragedy. The investigation went inactive in 2018 with several men never facing justice. To make it worse, later reports suggested undercover police actually spied on the Lawrence family during their campaign, trying to find dirt to smear them.
They spied on the grieving parents instead of catching the killers? That sounds like a movie villain plot.
It revealed how deep the corruption and defensiveness went. But the legacy is undeniable. We have the Race Relations Amendment Act because of Stephen. We have specialized hate crime units because of Stephen. Doreen Lawrence was even made a peer in the House of Lords for her activism.
It sounds like his death forced the UK to look in a mirror and actually acknowledge the rot in its institutions.
It did. Every year on April 22nd, the UK observes Stephen Lawrence Day. It's a reminder that a family's persistence can literally move the gears of the state, even if it takes a lifetime.
Thinking about that 20-year gap, Alex, what's the one thing we should remember about the Stephen Lawrence case?
Stephen's story proved that racism isn't just about individual prejudice, but about how systems can fail to protect their citizens based on the color of their skin.
That's Wikipedia. Every story, on demand. Search your next topic at wikipedia.ai.